You can be seated, and while you're being seated, let's give a warm Lipscomb welcome to Don McLaughlin.
Hey, good morning. It's great to be with you. I am so excited to be here. And I have 5 young adult children. Our youngest is 26. Our next is 28. Both of them graduated from here. And so I have a great long-term relationship with the school. I keep sending checks, and eventually we'll pay it all off. I'm guessing some of you are there. I want to ask you to think with me about what it means to wait. Situations where a delay can seem like an eternity. You know, I think about circumstances that I've been in ministry for 32 years. I've been with families that they've had testing for their pregnancy. And I'm sitting with this young, anxious couple in a waiting area for a doctor to come back and tell them the results of the test. I've sat with older people who have had tests for cancer or other disease, and there we sit waiting. And it seems like an eternity. I think about proposing to my wife. Will you marry me? No. If I propose, before I can get it out, will you marry? Yes. See, waiting in certain circumstances can feel like an eternity. In 2013, one of our sons and his wife were missionaries in Russia. They were about to give birth to our first grandchild in Russia. So we'd been working all summer long to get a visa to go to Russia. But there were a lot of struggles in Russia. The whole Snowden thing had just happened, and Syria was breaking out. They'd had some breaches in their borders with terrorism leading up to Sochi, so the Olympics. And so I thought of it as Snowden, Syria, and Sochi. The disaster that hit our visa application process. And so we kept waiting, couldn't get it. Every time we thought we were going to get it, we made another flight arrangement. And every time the flight arrangement was canceled, we got hit with another change fee. It was racking up into the thousands of dollars. Finally, the baby's born. We still don't have our visa. And so a friend of mine knew the president of Delta. So I emailed the president of Delta, Ed Bastian. I said, here's my circumstance. Our kids are missionaries. They've already had a baby. We can't get to Russia. The fees are mounting up. I get an email back from the president of Delta. He said, my assistant will give you a call. She called me. She said, we're willing to help you. What do you need? I said, if you can just wipe out the change fees, that would be perfect. She said, well, Mr. Bastian wants to do more. How about if we refund all the money you've paid so far, and on him, you will fly first class round trip to Moscow? There was no delay. I said, yes. And so they set up our trip to go to Moscow, but the problem was we still didn't have our visa. So the day of the flight was upon us. And at 5 o'clock that morning, his secretary called, do you have your visa? No. Well, the flight's at 11. The latest you can leave is at 8:30. When is your visa supposed to arrive? We're tracking it. It's supposed to be there at 8 o'clock. Well, call me if it comes. 8 o'clock, no visa. 8:10, no visa. 8:20, no visa. So once again, I'm thinking to myself, it isn't going to happen again. And finally, at 8:23, the delivery drives up. We get the visa, we get on a plane, and we go to meet our new granddaughter. Sure, it was only 23 minutes, but under those circumstances, it seemed like forever. You see, for many of you in this room, there's a waiting thing happening. Maybe it's tied to a specific event. Will I pass a test? When the grade comes back, will I be satisfied with it? I'm pledging a club. Is it going to turn out the way that I hope it will turn out? Will I be accepted in that club? And how will I feel if I am or if I'm not? See, there's a waiting thing happening. And for some of you, it's a little larger. You're waiting on things back home, a medical test, something with your grandparents, or your mom and dad getting a divorce. What's happening? And so we're waiting. We read about Jesus and his disciples in a story in in John chapter 16, where Jesus says, in just a little while, I'm going to go away. But it won't be long, and then I'll be back, and you're going to be sad, but it's only for a little while. And then I'll come back, and your sorrow will be turned to joy. But the Bible does something beautiful there. It detaches us from the conversation and allows us to dig in to the apostles' thoughts, and they're going back and forth. What does he mean, a little while? In the original language, the word for little is micron. Jesus says, in a micron of a moment, this is going to happen. And then after that, in a micron of a moment, your sorrow will be turned to joy. But they keep asking, what in the world does a little while mean? And I think you can feel what I'm saying. Somebody says, you say to a teacher, well, when will I know the test results? That'll be in a little while. Well, when? The test result medically, well, we'll get back to you. When? Because you see, a little while on my side of the equation might not seem like a little while on your side. Some of you have prayed prayers and you're waiting for God to come through, and what sounds like a micron to God sounds like eternity to you. It can mess with our minds. People that are waiting, anxiously waiting, can turn into monsters. You've watched news reports. You've seen it on the streets where someone who's a little late for work, the next thing you know, it's road rage, and then there's an accident and some terrible outcome. And you think to yourself, could you not have waited just 5 more minutes and saved a life? But in the moment, the micron seems like eternity. We're in a hurry. We're in between classes. We've got to run over here to McDonald's. We're going to grab something to eat. The work is stacked up. I've got papers to write. I get in line at McDonald's, and someone can't for the life of themselves figure out what to order off the McDonald's menu. And we question their substance. We question their intelligence. We think, what in the world are you doing? How can you even be in the flesh and not know what to order at McDonald's? Come on. You see, the micron can turn us into monsters. Sometimes when we have feelings for someone and someone else seems to have feelings for the same person and jealousy starts to set in, we think, no, they're mine. And my time is now. And if they go for you, what will come of me? And I can't wait. The micron can turn us into monsters. Jesus' response is, wait. There might be something happening in the micron that could change your life. That did happen to us. I hope this works. I want to introduce you, if I can, to my granddaughter, Mila. Yeah, this is my granddaughter, Mila. Say hi to Mila. Everyone say hi to Mila. Yeah. She's fun at holidays, at least my wife thinks so. This is our family, or at least part of our family. That's 2 of our boys. That's Mila's parents on the right-hand side, my wife. That's little Mila, and then the people that brought her into the world. When Mila was born, of course, we were in Atlanta. And Mila wants you to know that there was a little bit more to her story, and it didn't look good. See, when Mila was born, they're in the hospital in Russia. We're on Skype with them as the baby's being born. Over there, it's a big deal. So my wife and I, when we read to Mila for the very first time, we're reading to her over Skype. Thanks to the story I told you earlier, Delta helped us, and this is us meeting Mila at the airport. So let's go to the next slide there. We get to the airport, we get to meet our granddaughter, and we finally get to read to her in person. What a great experience. But having 5 children, 1 adopted, 4 born to us, we noticed something pretty quickly. Something was missing. There was something different. Mila didn't have what especially our nursing majors and some of you know about is what's called the startle reflex. When babies are born, there's 2 things that all of them are afraid of. It's loud noises and the fear of falling. But she didn't have the startle reflex. When the dog would bark, she wouldn't move. When our son, who lumbers through the house a little bit like Shrek, would get nothing. When we'd be banging around in that small Russian apartment and pots and pans would be making noises, Mila wouldn't move. One night, as my wife and I were laying in bed after everybody had gone to sleep, I reached over and I held her hand and I said, I don't think Mila can hear. She squeezed my hand and said, I've noticed the same thing. We began to watch, subtle little things like snapping a finger by her ears. Absolutely nothing. She had that interesting, beautiful little hum from the time she was born. While she'd be asleep, you'd just see her, and she'd hum like this. I thought back of a few of my very best friends in high school that were deaf. I remember that sound. I had to leave. I had to come back to Atlanta after 2 weeks. My wife stayed for a month. We began to talk back and forth. She got up one morning. She went out into the kitchen. She saw our daughter-in-law feverishly at the computer, and she was on Google, and she was Googling all kinds of articles. And she looked up at my wife, and she said, I think Mila is deaf. So I'm sending articles back and forth. She's sending articles back and forth. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And then we're hitting our knees. Oh, God! Oh, God, help us, God, help us, help us, help us. But in the mornings, my wife would get up, go into the little crib, pick up Mila, and begin to pray over her. And God began to do a work on me through this micron. One night, he got into my heart and asked me, so what's the matter with your granddaughter? Tell me what's the matter with her. Nowhere in the womb was there a little checklist that would say, well, hey, I think I'll be boy or girl, tall or short. I think I'll be athletic or musical, and maybe I'll have all 5 of my senses, and maybe I'll hear, or maybe I won't. None of that was in there. You see, the reality is your granddaughter is perfect already, just as she is. There's nothing wrong with her, but there might be something wrong with you. And there might be something wrong with the world where someone who is born without hearing or without sight, or someone that's born taller or shorter, someone that's wrapped in one color or another, is suddenly more or less acceptable than everyone around them. There's nothing wrong with them, but there is something so wrong with you. And man, I began to weep. But I wasn't weeping because she was deaf. I was weeping because of my heart. Because I started thinking of all the times in life where I had gone through life noticing what was apparently missing from the people around me. I recalled thinking through high school and early college of everything that was missing from me. I got out of bed. It's 11 hours difference. I immediately wrote a note to Mila. And I said in the note, you're perfect just the way you are. We'll learn sign language in 2 languages if we have to. But you're perfect just the way you are. And then I wrote a note to her parents, our son Aaron and his wife Erin. Yes, Aaron and Aaron. I did the wedding. Do you, Aaron, take your Aaron to be your Aaron? And I said, you're perfect just the way you are, and your daughter is perfect. There's nothing wrong. It's all right. My wife was praying over what God would do through this perfect little one. Well, my wife was also praying, and she said, Lord, if you do restore her hearing, we will tell everyone that you did it. Well, they had to come back to the United States for a visa within 90 days. They brought Mila home. Of course, we did the normal thing. We took her to a pediatric audiologist. Of course, they confirmed what we already knew. But we were in a different place. I began to love holding her and listening for that little But then about 4 months later, we get a call from my son and daughter-in-law. And they said, do you mind if we come over? I said, we'd love to. They got to our house, and our daughter-in-law said, we think that Mila can hear. My wife and I, not wanting to mislead them in any way, just, well, tell us about that. But inside, both of us later confessed, wishful thinking. But then we started to notice. And I'm watching little Mila, and she goes like this. And then I listen, and I watch. And a sound would happen, and her eyes would move. And another sound would happen, and her eyes would move. And I begin to realize they're moving in coordination. Something has changed. She can hear. They took her back to the pediatric oncologist. The pediatric oncologist says, she can hear, but this doesn't happen. I said, I think it did. No, yes. And the whole while, Mila's going, it's happening. Oh, this is Mila. This is Mila with my wife. They've got a little app on their phone that gives animal sounds and it makes a sound and then it names the animal in Russian and in English. It's kind of fascinating to sit there and watch someone who was born deaf hear. Our son, who's not given to overstatement or understatement, wasn't sure how to process this. He works with an international agency now that helps orphans in Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine. He was actually in Switzerland for a conference. There was a young college student at the conference who said to him, quite frankly, I don't believe. I want to believe in God, but I don't see any tangible evidence of God. My son waited clear to the end of the conference. A call was given. Does anyone have a testimony of the work and power of God in your life? And my son thought to himself, why do I hold this story in? Why do I want either for my daughter to have always heard or to still be deaf rather than to have been deaf and forgot to work and now she hears? Then he finally got up and he told his story. And afterward, the college student came up and said, you have no idea how you've impacted my life. To see you own what God did in you has changed me. I want you to know that my sorrow, listen carefully please, was turned to joy before Mila could hear. My sorrow was turned to joy, not by the circumstance, but by the transformation that came in me as God said, will you with empathy look at the world through my eyes? Don, you need to know something about humanity, and I'm going to teach it to you in the micron. You need to learn how to rejoice in your own struggles, your own deficiencies, the part of your life that doesn't make sense, the times you've got to wait when you can't stand the wait, the times when the news comes back differently than you hoped for, the times that you were rejected when you wanted to be accepted. Don, listen, I'm still at work. And she is perfect before she hears. And she's not more perfect now that she hears. And listen, you and you and you, you're already perfect. Before it changes, before the grades come in, before you're chosen and pledging, before a relationship does not work out. You're already perfect. You're already beautiful and amazing and valuable and treasured. And it's happening before the circumstance changes because it's in the micron that seems like an eternity that Jesus says, I will turn your mourning into joy. And I want you to hear this last thing I have to say. If the circumstance is all that will change you, the next circumstance will change you back. So if it takes a change in circumstance to move you from mourning to rejoicing, the very next circumstance can reverse all that. But when God works within you and helps you see the world through fresh eyes, then deaf or hear, blind or sight, lame or walk, you can rejoice.